Hello everyone, it's Tea Drinker here, and today I'm going to be ranking one of my favourite film series of all time, Star Wars. Now, the Star Wars films have meant a lot to me as a child, and they still do now. I used to dress up, play with toys, play with friends, always want to be Obi-Wan personally. I was obsessed, I had loads of Lego models, just everything Star Wars. I loved also playing the video games on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. I, when I say obsessed, I was obsessed. And today I'm going to be ranking all of the major live action films. So, not the holiday special or the Ewok films or even the Clone Wars film, just the major live action films today. Now, before I begin, remember, this is just my opinion, and I'd like to know your opinions in the comments below. And everyone's opinion's going to differ, so let's be respectful. Now, in 10th place, and this is a very controversial pick, is The Last Jedi. Now, personally, my main problem with this film is I didn't like Luke's portrayal. Luke, to me, wasn't like any other Jedi, so I didn't feel that he would become a hermit like Obi-Wan or Yoda did after Order 66. Uh, Luke to me was a new style of Jedi where he could go off and train a whole group of people. And I don't understand why they tried to make Luke kill Ben Solo as a child. I thought that doesn't work. Because why would Luke one day just wake up and go, you know what? I'm gonna kill Ben Solo. There's darkness in him. That's not Luke all over. Luke is the one who convinced his father to return to the light. Why would he kill Ben, his nephew, for having a little bit of darkness in him? It's just not likely. Also gonna mention the Canto Bite scene. I mean, what the hell were they thinking? It just doesn't work. It's a massive side plot that just doesn't fit. It's not very interesting in my opinion. I think that on Crate, Finn should have sacrificed himself. That felt like a wasted opportunity, in my opinion, as his character needed that sacrifice to actually have any importance in the whole entire film. And one thing that really bothers me, but I'm not even going to go on about it, is Leia Poppins. Just not going to go on about it. There's a few things I did like about it, though. I liked Rey's heritage being no one. And it kind of shows that you don't have to have a powerful family to have the Force. I thought that was quite interesting. I think the visuals were pretty good, and I appreciate they put a lot of time and work into it. Okay, next up, number 9, I have The Force Awakens. Now, another controversial one, putting it so low. I personally think that this is not a strong film because it is the same as A New Hope. A protagonist on a desert has to save the galaxy by blowing up a battle station, and they lose a father figure, and it all ends in happiness. This is the same as A New Hope, just updated, and to me it felt more like fan fiction than a good film. I liked seeing Star Wars back on the big screens, and there were some interesting character points that I felt could have been developed in the sequels, which evidently weren't. Okay, now all of the films from here on I quite enjoy. So next up at number 8 is Solo. Now, Solo is a very decent film, but it's forgettable. That was my one problem. It's forgettable. I really liked the portrayal of Han Solo, and I thought that was a good nod to Harrison Ford, and I felt it was done pretty well. I didn't like Lando. It just didn't feel right. It didn't. His character didn't feel right to me personally. One thing that I did love about this film was it had a different feel to it, and I loved the Maul cameo at the end. I thought that was done really, really well. Now, next up on my list at number 7 is Attack of the Clones. Now, this film is the first prequel film I've put on the list, and this film for me, I really enjoy. Although it does have some questionable dialogue, some questionable visuals, it's still an enjoyable film. I love the characters of Obi-Wan, Count Dooku, who Count Dooku is very underrated. Uh, I personally didn't feel too strong of a connection with Anakin and Padme. It felt a bit forced, and it kind of detached the characters from the story, and I wasn't a big fan of that. But I loved the fights and the visuals. I think were not too bad, but this is a I think a solid attempt at a Star Wars film, and I think they did a good job with it. Next up on my list is Rogue One. Now, for me, the first act in this was a bit weak, a bit slow moving, wasn't sure where it was going, but as it went on, the second and third act in particular, was amazing. The whole Scarif, the that whole kind of collection of scenes on Scarif is just amazing, and the ending with Vader is one of my favourite cinematic scenes of all time. I really enjoyed the characters. I think all of them were very well written, and a couple of forgettable characters, but most of them were done really, really well. And I loved seeing the Empire with the updated visuals, which we hadn't seen since the original trilogy. So I really enjoyed that. Next up on my list is The Phantom Menace. Now, this one for me is a really good film. I loved the fighting in it. That Darth Maul, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon Jinn scene is an amazing scene. One of my favourite lightsaber fights from the whole franchise. And then talking about that, the music as well. Duel of the Fates is an amazing, amazing soundtrack for the fighting scenes. And I loved the way that the Phantom Menaces mirrors the rise of Hitler in Nazi Germany, the way he had got emergency powers and turned it into a dictatorship, kind of reminds me how Palpatine manages to get emergency powers and then turn it into a dictatorship, and that was all set up in this film. There's a bit too much politics for some, but I personally didn't mind it. And there's a few questionable decisions. I mean, Jar Jar's a character. I'm not really against Jar Jar, but I just don't feel he was needed. I really didn't understand why they tried to bring midichlorians in. That didn't make much sense to me. And C-3PO being built by Anakin, was it needed? Not really. But overall, this film is a very, very good film, in my opinion. Now, next up on my list, and this is going to be a very, very controversial pick. I will just like to say before I reveal this one, all of these top 4 change all of the time, and I love them all really, really much. But fourth place is Empire Strikes Back. Now, I know this is very, very controversial, but it's a it is a brilliant film, very gripping. I love the Hoth, Bespin, even the middle part on Dagobah, and it's just one of the best made Star Wars films. I loved Yoda in it as well. We were introduced to that character. It was very, very interesting. The acting was all super, and it had that massive twist at the end with Vader being Luke's father, and I just thought it was a brilliant, brilliant film. I don't actually have much criticism to it, to be honest, but for me, the films above it on the list I prefer slightly for whatever reason, but we'll come on to that. And next up, At number 3 is Return of the Jedi. Now, this was my favourite film when I was younger. I loved the ending. I and how it ended the original trilogy and it ended the saga. I loved the way they did that, and the fight scene with Vader, Palpatine, and Luke I thought was done brilliantly, especially for the time it was created. It was very quick compared to the previous fight scenes we'd seen. I loved the space fight. The battle over Endor and the second Death Star is one of my favourite space fight scenes in the whole of the saga, and it really was a perfect ending to the Star Wars saga. Now, my top two are interchangeable, but for me, I'm going to have to put A New Hope next. Now, I know this one is the one that started it all. This one is so fun, great characters, great seeing space for the first time. This is the first Star Wars film I saw, and it was just an amazing film, and it got so many fans based off of this film, and it's very immersive, and I just love it so much. But the one problem I have with it is it's very kind of predictable. It's set out like a fairy tale that there's a princess that needs to be saved, the hero saves her, and it ends in happiness, and it's really good and I love the story, but for me, that's what didn't get it top place on my list, was because it was a bit predictable. Now, I know this one is going to be very controversial for being the top, but for me, the greatest Star Wars film of all time is Revenge of the Sith. Now, I know many people are like, how dare you put a prequel in the top spot of your list? And I understand that because the prequels are known for questionable dialogue, questionable visuals, and some questionable characters. But Revenge of the Sith for me is just one of the best created Star Wars films of all time. The it was a great way to end the trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and I think out of all of the Star Wars film, this has the most impact in terms of emotion. The Order 66 scene is so devastating when you see all of the Jedi killed, when you see Anakin march on the temple, and then the ending on Mustafar with Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting the brothers. It's tragic. It really is. It was, as a child, I cried at this film, and as a child, you don't cry much in terms of film, but the fighting in this as well was amazing. I loved the Mustafar fight. I loved the Palpatine versus Yoda fight, General Grievous versus Obi-Wan, Mace Windu versus Palpatine. Just there's so much brilliant fighting scenes in this, and action set pieces is just really, really well made in that sense. The opening scene is my favourite space battle in all of Star Wars. The way, like, from as soon as it starts till the end of the sequence, it's just perfection the whole time. And without this film, we would not have the memes that we do today. It's because of this film that we have the amount of memes we do. And that is my list. Now, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd like to hear some feedback. This is only my second video. I'd like to hear some feedback of what you all think I can improve on. And also, let me know your opinions on my list and what films you prefer than others. Now, thank you so much for watching. Bye.